It's Hugo and Jake, they're coming to take a look at the Quran. So make no mistake, it's gonna be great, delivering more than comedy, that's what they wanna be. But honestly, it's fact from fiction, leaving lasting hits. When Hugo and Jake take faith and illustrate contradictions, create apostates to be great. Atheists make people who believe see the world in a different way. What's on the episode today? Take it away, Hugo and Jake. Loving the way they're splitting the fact from the fake, attempting to make those who hold faith reevaluate and wake up. But they just stay stuck and hate us. Wait and stay in place, no time to waste. The Quran reloaded with Hugo and Jake.
Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake. Did you just crank that?
It
looked like you went, hello everyone.
It wasn't my intention,
It was
but if
my periphery though, so like Hugo's over
so.
here if you don't know.
I'll take
where I keep him.
If it was, though, I'll take a gif of it. And welcome to the Quran Reloaded. We're back to continue on in the Quran, and we finished the third surah, the women, last time, or was it the fourth surah? Are we on the fourth one today?
This is the fifth right now. The last one was the women. This one's called the table, or in Arabic, because I can read that and say it correctly. Al-Ma'idah. That's exactly how it sounds in Arabic countries.
Al-Ma'idah would be my guess. Anyway, and this is going to be a lot, there's obviously going to be the repeats of Halal and stuff like normal, but the main crux of this entire surah is going to be what animals you should and should not domesticate and eat, and how you should kill them when doing so. Basically,
it's like a halal haram thing, right?
In regard to food. It's actually,
right.
It's a misconception. Some people think that halal just means it's safe to eat. They just think it's, well, I guess similar things for kosher as well. They think basically halal and haram are just food things, but actually halal and haram basically means, halal means it is okay for you to do in Islam, and haram means it is not okay for you to do.
Right, but I mean like stuff like, if you're not aware, like music can be halal or haram.
Yeah.
Or art can be, so it's not just dietary.
We, for instance, are absolutely haram. So,
but if you ate us, we'd be halal.
As long as you didn't strangle us to death. But we'll get to that today.
You gotta bleed us.
In the fifth surah, the table. O you who believe, fulfill your commitments. Livestock animals are permitted for you, except those specified to you, but not wild game while you are in pilgrim sanctity. God's decrees, whatever he wills. Livestock is going to mean specific things. I looked this up, actually. Livestock specifically means things like cows. It means things they would have already culturally have connotations to domesticated animals. Things that they
Camels.
Sure. Whatever. I don't know.
Are they allowed to eat camel? I know some cultures do, but I don't know if Islam says yes to camel.
I don't know. We'll get into those rules somewhere in the surah, but I would guess no, probably more for a utilitarian reason of if you're killing your camels, how we getting around, you know what I mean?
You just want to crack their humps open and drink it like coconut milk?
I don't think you know what the inside of a camel hump is full of, but okay.
Milk. Camel milk.
I'm pretty sure this is an It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia joke.
Is it?
I'm 90% sure.
I haven't seen that episode. But
is it an homage or a ripoff if you forget that it's a thing you didn't come up with?
I don't think it's a forget. I don't think I've seen that.
Oh.
I haven't seen every episode of Always Sunny. Don't hurt me.
O you who believe, do not violate God's sacraments, nor the sacred month, nor the offerings, nor the garlanded, nor those headed for the sacred house seeking blessing from their Lord and approval. When you have left the pilgrimage sanctity, you may hunt, and let not the hatred of people who barred you from the sacred mosque incite you to aggression, and cooperate with one another in virtuous conduct and conscience. And do not cooperate with one another in sin and hostility, and fear God. God is severe in punishment.
So this is basically like once... I don't know what areas the pilgrim sanctity is. I assume it has someplace in between where you're at in Mecca or something. But there's designated areas where you can hunt things. But also, like, don't fight with people while you do that. I don't really...
The point is that while you're on your pilgrimage on your way to Mecca, you are not supposed to hunt. You're not supposed to hunt at all, unless you are to the point of starving. The idea is, on your pilgrimage to Mecca, what you should be doing is contemplating God and obedience to him, and it's sort of a journey of self-discovery in your religion. It's not just, I'm gonna go here and do the thing. So you're not supposed to be focused on hunting and stuff like that. You're supposed to take what you need when you go. This is also why, in previous surahs, they mentioned a rule of, as far as when you're on your pilgrimage, if you're a trader, you're not really supposed to trade either. It's not a business trip. This should be a trip where you are becoming spiritually fulfilled, etc., etc., and that's what they want you to focus on. That's why there's rules like
do you
this.
find it odd that these customs have pretty much stuck around in their entirety? Like Ramadan, for instance. Do you see the guy? There was like a migrant worker working on Ramadan or something, and he was eating lunch, and some guy just walked up and like started taking a cell phone video of him while he was slapping him upside the head for eating on Ramadan. Like it's so weird that these customs, like, I don't know, like even like Christian things, like they fall away a little bit. You know what I mean? And you become more it just becomes like a normal person thing.
The thing
extreme
is,
thing.
a lot of the Christian stuff that's fallen away is only recently, and a lot of that's because of the modern world and access to information, which you don't have in a lot of Middle Eastern countries.
Recently, in the last century or two, right?
I would even say before that. Are you talking about like recently, like modern liberal Christians? Or are you talking about like Reformation stuff? Because that happened.
Well, not Reformation stuff, obviously. I'm not talking about Luther and stuff. I'm talking about like the ritualistic nature of their activities. Like Catholics do that, but it's still not something that carries over into their life. You know what I mean? Like you don't see Jews beating people on the Sabbath for working.
Well, it depends on where you are. I assume there's probably some pretty hardline Hasidic Jews in Jerusalem that might get on your ass about it, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with just progress, less progress. It's a newer religion. It's I feel like a dick saying this, more primitive society. It is. I mean,
it's primitive,
less
in
technologically advanced, less socially advanced in the sense of. And I'm straight up gonna say this right here. No, it's not cultural fucking relativism whether or not you should be treating women equally. You should. It has nothing to do with different society.
They're people.
No, fuck you. Your fucking culture sucks if you're treating people like that. Period.
Right.
So. I don't know. I think it has to do with geography, as far as isolation because of the kind of area it is. I think it has to do with the culture of very traditional religious stuff. And
it sounds a lot like to me that you're saying just because they're brown.
It's not because they're brown. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin.
I'm pretty sure you're super racist now.
Now? Prohibited you are from carrion, blood, the flesh of swine, and animals dedicated to other than God. So let's one by one go through some of these and explain what that means and why. First of all,
carrion.
That means animals that have died any way other than you killing them. Sorry, it means like it died of natural causes or something like that, or you found a dead animal that seems to have just dropped dead. You are not allowed to eat that.
No roadkill, Cletus.
The practical purpose would. And by the way, a lot of these food rules, we talked about this in the Bible Reloaded in the Old Testament when they were talking in Leviticus about various dietary restrictions. A lot of these, well, many Muslims will disagree, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. It was a practical purpose at the time. The reason that the rule was don't eat animals you just find dead is because guess what? If you just have a habit of eating bodies you found dead of animals, eventually you're going to find one that died from being sick or has been sitting out in the sun too long or something, and you're going to get sick and die.
Right.
What else was there?
Blood. Same kind of issue with the pathogens and stuff. A lot of, like, if you're especially if you're just drinking fresh blood, it's not pasteurized, and like a lot of people eat like what am I thinking? Blood sausage, the black pudding. That's what I'm thinking of in England. That's a pig blood thing. And I hear it's very, very tasty. But you have to cook that stuff out because, like, what's the one thing they tell you about, like, when, like, STD specifically or something? Like, if you have blood transfer, it's a really, really high risk. And that's the same thing if you ingest it, especially if you have, like, sores in your mouth or something because you live in the fucking desert. So don't do that.
Yep. Next, the flesh of swine, which would be any sort of pork product. If you know anything about food, or if you worked in food service, you know that pork products, especially compared to things like beef, are much more fickle in regard to food safety. So it's harder to maintain and make sure that they are safe. I mean, modern day, no, you're fine. I mean, go eat bacon and pork and stuff, and you're totally good. But at the time, it would have been a little more difficult to maintain food safety in the desert for pork as opposed to some other meat they might have access to that is more safe on the whole. And that's why you can't eat the fucking pork. Yeah. And then animals dedicated to other than God, which would mean if someone else slaughters a pig, or not a pig, sorry, if someone else slaughters a cow or livestock and says, "This is in the name of my God, Baal or Baal or whatever and kills it. And then they eat it. And they're like, hey, you want some? You're not allowed to eat it. Even if you yourself didn't sacrifice it to another god, you're not allowed to eat the meat.
That one doesn't have a practical thing. That's just petty.
Yeah, that is just petty. Also, the flesh of animals strangled, killed violently, killed by fall, gored to death, mangled by wild animals, except what you rescue and animals sacrificed on altars.
That's kind of all the carrion thing, really.
Yeah, a lot of those are just you don't know how long it's been sitting around. You don't know. Yeah,
right. Unless you watch it get gored in person. So you still can't do that though. One would assume that's more to do with like if it's mangled by wild animals or gored to death, the thing that gored or mangled it is still nearby.
Yeah. Also, part of this had to do with, at least from the Islamic source that I could find, and it makes sense. Had to do with the blood loss thing too, because the actual halal way, if you don't know, to kill an animal like a cow, you hang it upside down. This is terrible. Please don't look at pictures of this if you're squeamish. If you're not,
or if you just really like animals.
Sure. By the way, if you don't know, the modern way they kill livestock typically is they'll have something like a gun now. If you've seen No Country for Old Men, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like a little air gun that goes and kind of shoots a thing into their brain and kills them immediately. They use that.
Suffering, unless their life was suffering, but
which it probably was.
A lot of places are taking up more ethical practice, which I really appreciate. But yeah, it's better than halal or her. Yeah, oh god.
When you have a halal slaughtering, what you do is you hang the cow upside down while it is still alive, and if you know the distribution of weight on a cow, I'm sure you'll recognize that's probably not super comfortable. And then they take like a knife and they slit the thing's throat while it's alive, and it bleeds out from the neck. As you'd imagine, they let all the blood drain out. This is because, again, the reason this originally was a thing was because it was the safest way to get as much blood out of the animal as possible. If you cut its neck while it's still alive and it's hanging upside down, the heart will still help pump out some of the blood. Much more so than if you just were to hang a corpse, whatever you want to call it, dead animal upside down, cut its throat. It wouldn't go as much because the heart's quicker. Not beating.
Especially in the desert and stuff. Like if you've ever been hunting, like you live in the Midwest, they don't do this to like the deer and stuff. What you do is you kill it with your gunshot or your bow and arrow if you're a real man, and you end up cutting it and you take the guts out and you put them in the woods or whatever because you don't eat the guts, and then you hang it in your garage with like a bucket under it for a couple days.
Yeah.
So it's just faster this way, and it makes sense in a desert situation where you don't have a lot of time for that kind of thing because it's really harsh out.
Yeah. So again, at the time, I have no problem with halal practices when they were developed, because you know what? People who did practice things that were halal, and the Jewish version of halal, the kosher, I assume they probably on the whole were a little bit healthier and had fewer foodborne diseases than other groups.
Sure.
However, if I was John Oliver, I'd say it's current year. And guess what? You don't have to do that shit anymore. Now you're just causing undue, unnecessary suffering of animals. And it's really inefficient, which I assume makes halal meat much more expensive than just normal, everyday, not crazy person meat. So, I don't know. There's some information on halal food if you guys were interested in that.
Yeah, the same thing goes for kosher as well. It's basically the same thing. And I believe both need a holy person to pray over top of it.
And the practice of drawing lots. That's just the end there. That was on the end of all those restrictions that we listed a little bit earlier. The practice of drawing lots. I don't know why they put it alongside all this food stuff, but it's actually pretty interesting. The idea is they would go to a holy person, air quote, holy person, a person with the ability to, air quote, see into the future, like a psychic, whatever. And they'd go and they'd have a set of arrows, like arrows for archery. And on each of these arrows, on it would be written a phrase of some sort. These phrases would be known to the people at the time. Think like a magic 8-ball. You know what the different sides of the die say on a magic 8-ball, but you still shake it and look what it says. So there's these arrows, and you'd come and you'd pay them, and they'd tell your future. You'd pick an arrow, and that arrow would be the one that spelled your destiny. This is just the Quran saying, don't do that. That's wrong. More interestingly, though, I almost feel bad going to this again. That crazy Islamic source, when they're talking about mediums, here's what they have to say about using mediums. Superstitious divination, which has also been prohibited, means that instead of deciding the problems of life in a rational way, one should decide them on fanciful grounds, or it could mean deciding matters by arbitrary interpretation of accidental events, or to have one's future prophesized by means which have not been reasonably established as adequate for obtaining knowledge about the future. This includes geomancy, astrology, fortune-telling, and the numerous other methods adopted to determine omens.
Hugo.
Yes, Jake.
Why do you hurt me? That was the least self-aware thing that you've read.
I think that's the least self-aware thing a human being has ever written in any format in the history of the human race. And I love it.
Jesus Christ.
Today, those who disbelieve have despaired of your religion, so do not fear them, but fear me. Today, I have perfected your religion for you, and have completed my favor upon you, and have approved Islam as a religion for you. But whoever is compelled by hunger, with no intent of wrongdoing, God is forgiving and merciful.
So you can break it, but only if you're like
Yeah.
genuinely starving.
If you're in a survival situation, you can eat pork or whatever. Which, again, these are all for practical purposes, because they even say if you got no other choice, go for it. So even the people who wrote this must have been aware the reason they were doing what they were doing. Maybe, you know what? I'll even give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't know why what they were doing worked, but they noticed patterns. People are good at pattern recognition, even false pattern recognition, as you can see from what we're reading. But someone figured out pork makes people sick, random dead animals make people sick, and this is how they decided to get them to stop eating that shit.
I have nothing to add.
I'd like to think it was a genuine guy, just a guy who was smart for his time and figured that out. Didn't know why. Of course he doesn't know why, but he tried to convince people. He's like, guys, listen, the pork, for some reason, there's something wrong with it. It seems like people randomly die when they eat it. Can we not? And then they were like, but it's so good though. And the guy was like, yeah, but like, maybe don't take that risk. And they were like, fuck off, nerd. So he did leave. And he's like, shit, my entire group of, like, in-group is dying.
Yeah.
How can I convince
they're all
them?
shitting their brains out over there.
How can I convince them that there's a connection between the raw blood meat and their shits, their death shits? So then they wrote the Quran, and then, whoops.
The whole Quran was written just for people with salmonella-related pig shits.
Yeah. Weirder things have happened.
Nice.
They ask you what is permitted for them. Say, permitted for you are all good things, including what trained dogs and falcons catch for you. See, I feel like this is almost, you can't eat food that wild animals catch, but the ones that your animals catch. Again, more evidence this is about length of time the body has been sitting around in decomposition, as opposed to it's some moral reason. It's clearly because someone realized fresh meat bled from the neck.
Yeah,
alive is safe.
I also really appreciate just that they went from dogs, which is like the common human companion, and they're like, should we get some cats? And I'm like, no, fuck that, falcons. I'm getting falcons.
Falcons
I'm
are
gonna
used
be a
for hunting.
falconer.
Because they can, yeah.
I know, but who decides, like, I guess we'll just train that bird? Should we train a bird? It's got claws and shit. And someone's in the back's like, actually, those are talons. It's a raptor. It's a bird of prey. And they're like, shut the fuck up, Brad. Training this bird now. And then it kills, like, mice for him? I don't...
Yeah, I think it's like rodents and stuff. Yeah.
You guys want some rodents?
You train them according to what God has taught you, so eat them from what they catch for you, and pronounce God's name over it, and fear God. God is swift in reckoning. So that's their way around it. God told you, and you trained the bird, so it's fine for some reason.
The transitive property of bird training.
I cannot wait for the day. This won't be in my lifetime. I don't know why I'm saying that. It's really nice that one day I can look forward to. No, still wrong wording. It's nice to know that someday someone else will look at this and go, wow, wasn't it genius of someone to figure out that bleeding living things from the neck was the best way to create safe food for their people. Too bad it led to hundreds of years of everything else. But anyway, I think that's it for today. So we'll continue next week or the week after, whenever we're back, to talk about more food-related stuff. I think a lot of this is front-loaded. We might skip around a little bit in this chapter because they tend to talk about the same stuff. Hell,
Yeah.
bad, heaven, good.
But we wanted to make sure that you got the information. I don't know. Maybe I can cook some halal food for us.
That might actually be interesting, like just to see, just some regional cuisine.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll get some stuff going on. We'll cook together separately. It'd be funny if we cook the same thing. See what happens.
Yours would be better.
Maybe. What if I do it with one hand?
Okay. I'm afraid no matter what happens, once I actually put like the final ingredient in, it'll like spontaneously turn into a hot pocket. I don't know what'll.
I don't know how to cook food that doesn't end in hot pockets.
Yeah, that's all I know. So you can always follow us on Twitter at Bible Reloaded.
You follow Hugo Reloaded and watch us shitpost people in the middle of the night while we're waiting for things to upload, because that's what I do, apparently.
You can also donate to our Patreon if you like this show, or over at the Bible Reloaded. You can subscribe over there.
Yeah.
Maybe
You could also join our official Hugo and Jake Discord, and you too could be roofed. Hugo still doesn't know what that means. Doesn't matter. Some people know what it means. It's an in-meme.
So until next time, I'm Hugo.
And I'm roofed. I'm going to pester you with it until it makes sense to you.
Quran Reloaded.